Hi, welcome. This is Sound Biolab, a community biolab here in Seattle that was started in 2017 by a small group of passionate individuals to provide a space for anyone to get hands-on doing laboratory biology work without any qualification requirements or expectations to publish or patent anything. It was and still is also a space where science education activities can be hosted and organized from. Sound Biolab didn't come from nowhere. There are other spaces like it in a number of cities around the world. In this 10-minute presentation, I'm going to share findings from work done together with my colleagues Kelly Dunn and Nadia Peak of the Machine Agency in the Human-Centered Design and Engineering Department at the University of Washington about the contemporary realities of work in community biolabs.
Labs like SoundBio, which we refer to in our paper as Community Biolabs, are spaces for DIYBio work and community building. DIYBio, or do-it-yourself biology, can mean different things to different people, but we and others summarize it as laboratory biology work being pursued outside of traditional institutions, meaning outside of university or industry research labs. A growing number of HCI researchers have been drawn to DIYBio for a variety of reasons. By placing scientific artifacts into new social contexts, DIYBio invites us to reconsider the functions of biomaterials and research tools, and reimagine how biowork could be done and the sort of systems that could support that work. DIYBio is also often associated with novice users and resource-constrained settings, both of which offer opportunities for systems design work, as has been explored in other application areas such as digital fabrication. We have a long-term research interest in supporting laboratory research scientists to make use of machine automation, building and adapting tools to suit the diverse needs, and we are particularly interested in supporting users of community biolabs. In this study, we wanted to provide a firmer foundation for our own future research than we could obtain from just my personal experience working in and helping to run a community biolab, and the limited insights available from scholarly sources on DIYBio and community biolab websites. Studying interview data and synthesizing that with prior scholarly work and publicly available information on community biolabs, we found some of our assumptions and expectations challenged. Instead of resource-poor settings, we found community biolabs to be places of abundance, both in terms of physical resources and expertise. While the similarity to makerspaces is obvious, we found that the principal creative work pursued in these spaces is building molecular biology workflows, and that they bear little resemblance to activities common in most makerspaces. Surprisingly, we found that most of the labs in our study already had equipment on hand for machine automation of common lab tasks, but that these machines were not seeing much use. To recruit participants, we first had to define our scope. We defined a community biolab as a physical lab space equipped for life science work that is run as a not-for-profit enterprise independent of any large institution such as university or biotech company. We then used our own knowledge of and contacts within the DIYBio community to build out a list of labs. These efforts were greatly helped by attending the Global Community Bio Summit in 2020 and 2021, to our knowledge, the only international conference that pays attention to community biolabs among other sites and practices, though mostly from the perspective of supporting community organizing work. We also relied on publicly available online resources, notably DIYBiosphere, as well as using keyword search through Google to try and find any labs that might have escaped unnoticed. Through this multi-pronged approach, we identified 19 labs in scope and recruited 16 users or managers for 45-minute interviews over Zoom. In a few cases, we interviewed more than one person from the same lab, so our sample included people working at 11 different labs. We used semi-structured interviews to learn directly from those using and running community biolabs about how they were approaching project work, what their day-to-day activities looked like, what tools they relied on, and paying particular attention to software and automation within the interview. We also asked people about their constraints, frustrations, and worries. Significant constraints were described in all interviews, and we asked people what motivated them to nevertheless persist with their work, both their laboratory projects and supporting the lab as a whole. Like all fields of science, biologists need tools to interrogate and to manipulate, to record and to communicate. Laboratory biologist, most likely working with biomolecules, things like DNA and proteins, is particularly reliant on tools to make it possible to observe things that are too small to be seen and to manipulate things that are too small to be touched. We found that most of the project work described to us in community biolabs could be summarized as molecular biology or microbiology work. That is working with biomolecules and microorganisms, relying on a variety of specialist instruments and machines to support multi-stage workflows with work spread over days to months. The specialist lab equipment required to pursue complete molecular biology workflows can cost thousands, if not tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on what your particular goals and therefore requirements are. However, we found that this was not holding back work in any of the labs we heard from. Budgets, whenever mentioned, were definitely limited, but equipment costs were minimal because in almost every case, equipment was either donated or purchased for little cost secondhand, with a lot of participants mentioning eBay as a source. Due to the abundance of donated equipment, users of community labs that we spoke with did not rely on making their own equipment to be able to pursue their goals. That does not mean that fabricating equipment or other artifacts is not a common activity in community biolabs. While based on our data, many users of community biolabs have no interest or engagement with making practices, most participants could recall specific items in the lab that had been made by users, and several had made things themselves. Examples included simple repurposing, such as a reptile terrarium as a laboratory incubator or an aquarium as a makeshift sterile workbench. But more sophisticated examples abounded, including a DIY shaker incubator for cultivating microorganisms. Cooperative project work is common in community biolabs and was seen as desirable to people we spoke to for a number of reasons, but significant barriers hold back practitioners who are trying to pursue this work. Time and expertise barriers were raised by multiple participants, and the two are interconnected. While all participants in our study mostly had university degrees in biology and substantial laboratory experience, they found that when working with people who did not have a similar background, they ran into numerous training difficulties that they found it hard to overcome. They saw the required training as partly about technical knowledge, but also about training some sort of scientific mindset. The significant time constraints of all users, who are largely hobbyists, limits the time to work and train together. Precious time must be spent coordinating calendars to arrange meetings online or in person and talk through every step of the work in detail, where two domain experts might be able to manage a project successfully through largely asynchronous communication. We were particularly interested in whether robotic automation would be prevalent in community biolabs, in line with growing adoption within professional labs, particularly in industry and clinical settings. In fact, a majority, 7 of the labs we heard from, listed an automated liquid handling platform, most commonly an OpenTrons robot, among the equipment available in their lab. Many interviewees expressed interest in and broad support for robotic automation, though few had used such platforms themselves or had any concrete plans to do so in future. Desirable affordances of automation offered by participants included common refrains around automation in professional labs, such as speed, efficiency, scale, safety, reproducibility, and accuracy. One interviewee, Tim, was making extensive use of the OpenTrons OT2 robot as a platform for a project called BioArtBot, aimed at engaging non-lab members through a website to design an image to be printed in bacteria on a solid growth medium by the lab robot. Interestingly, Tim talked about how the robot offered an attractive entry point to work in the community lab because of his engineering background and expertise. You can see in this video from the BioArtBot project YouTube channel, organisms and biomaterials take time to grow and are in general very responsive to time. Growing, yes, but also degrading. Some chemical reactions common in labs, such as the polymerase chain reaction, may take several hours, with further processes taking more hours before you can know whether your reactions have worked. Patience was raised as one of those less obvious skills that must be trained in new lab users who haven't experienced work in a biolab before. Wrapping up, we feel that anyone interested in communities of hands-on practitioners who are tackling complex cooperative work outside of profit motives or academia should be interested in community biolabs. We plan to build on the findings from this study to pursue collaborative systems design research together with community biolab users to integrate machine automation in new and unexpected ways into their work. We also see opportunities for software systems that can provide better support for cooperative work in community biolabs than the generic communication tools such as email and Google Docs that users are currently relying on. We wanted to finish by sharing a quote from one of our interviewees about what motivates them. Responses to this question varied. Some described a satisfaction derived from having the freedom to pursue their own curiosity and to learn new skills. Beyond the ability to explore curiosity and to learn, many interviewees felt motivated by the idea that their work in the community biolab was contributing to bringing about a broad social change or demonstrating the feasibility of alternative techno-scientific futures, with the community biolab acting as a stage or microcosm. Thank you.